Hello and welcome to the video. Once again, my name is Wade Daniel Smith. And again, in this video, I'm going to discuss the fact that a little while ago, a Christian claimed that God could not forgive sins except by becoming a man and dying on a cross and somehow raising himself from the dead. That without the death and alleged resurrection of Jesus, that God could not forgive sins. First of all, that's a lie. It is an outright lie. The book of Malachi tells you that God does not change, and elsewhere in the Bible. And of course, we know from the ontological argument and the cosmological argument that God is almighty to begin with. He does not need anything, not a sacrifice, not even a prayer to forgive sins. He is almighty. Almighty. He controls everything. He even controls your free will. All right? God is almighty. He does not need a false God man to die on a cross to forgive sins. He can simply speak the universe into existence. He can definitely forgive sins. If you think God can only forgive sins since Jesus died on the cross, how did he forgive the sins of Moses? How did he forgive the sins of the people in the Torah and the prophets before Jesus if God could only forgive sins by Jesus' alleged death and resurrection? That's a lie. How do you think God forgives the sins of whatever aliens or angels or whatever else might have existed in reality before humans existed? How would God forgive those beings' sins if not for the cross? If you think that God can only forgive through the cross of Jesus, you are a lunatic. There is something wrong with you. The universe is however old it is, we don't even know. Scientists think they know, and short Earth creationists think they know, and somebody else thinks they have a different theory or whatever. We have no idea how old the universe is. However old it is, God has obviously had to forgive other beings throughout creation before humans even existed. So, how did he forgive the sins of those beings before Jesus ever existed if you think God can only forgive sins through the alleged death and resurrection of Jesus? That is blasphemy. The whole Christian New Testament is blasphemy. God is almighty. He does not need a sacrifice to forgive sins. As a matter of fact, in the book of Isaiah, he said he hated sacrifices. He said to take your sacrifice to your governor and see if he likes it. He said what he wanted was a broken and contrite heart and for you to plead the cause of the fatherless and the widow. He didn't say give them animal sacrifices, and human sacrifices are banned in the Torah. So how could the sacrifice of Jesus add anything to God's ability to forgive sins? That is blasphemy. And if you don't admit it's blasphemy, you're going to hell. You're literally making God the most impotent and powerless being in the universe by your claim that he couldn't forgive sins without the death of Jesus. I'm a mortal man and I can forgive sins without the death of Jesus. I'm telling you, Jesus was a blaspheming false prophet, and I can forgive somebody without Jesus. So obviously, God Almighty can forgive somebody without Jesus. You're a complete false prophet if you sit there and claim that God cannot forgive sins by simply speaking forgiveness into existence. He can speak the whole universe into existence. Obviously, he can forgive sins. Miracles, as I said in the other video, miracles, the alleged miracles of Jesus, are not the standard of truth. It tells you that in Deuteronomy 13. The standard of truth is that the truth cannot contradict the truth. Anybody can fake a miracle, especially when they got 10 or 12 assistant magicians like the disciples. Anybody can fake a miracle. Miracles are not the standard of truth. An alleged virgin birth is not a true sign from God. As Rabbi Tovia Senior pointed out, there's nothing to see. How do you prove that a virgin birth was a virgin birth? There's nothing to see. A sign is something you're supposed to be able to see. With a virgin birth, there's absolutely nothing you can see to confirm that it was a virgin birth. So it can't be a sign from God. There is no such thing as a virgin birth. You can turn to the book of Genesis, and God commanded them to be fruitful and multiply. And it says Adam had sex with his wife, and she conceived and bare fruit and had a son. All right? That's how children are born. There is no such thing as virgin birth. And even if there was, there would be no way to verify it. So how could you prove that it was a sign from God? It's not. That's why the rabbi rejected that as a sign from God. If you read Isaiah chapter 7 in the Hebrew, the word virgin in English is mistranslated. The prophet was talking about his own wife and his own firstborn son. He was not talking about the Messiah at all. And if you read the context of the chapter, it's pretty obvious that he was talking about his own wife and his firstborn son, because in the following chapter, he's talking about his own wife and his second born son. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the Messiah. And in the in the following chapter, he used the word virgin for real and made a joke about the fact that his wife was no virgin. Christianity is totally faked on false translations of the Torah and the prophets. I don't even know if Jesus ever even existed for real. There's pretty strong evidence that he never actually existed, and the entire New Testament is a complete myth with no basis in fact at all. But the real God is almighty and does not need a dead man to die on a cross and to forgive sins. And if Jesus ever did exist, and if he did call himself God in the flesh, he busted hell wide open, because that is blasphemy. That's the same sin Adam and Eve committed to begin with.